extremist groups are going local to disrupt the midterms. That is exactly what they're doing. As election day draws near, mayors and police chiefs across the country are getting a new warning that extremists have jettisoned their nationwide election intimidation strategy in favor of local efforts focused on neighborhood ballot boxes. We cannot be more serious about this story. In some places, and Mesa, Arizona comes to mind, they are at the drop boxes in military style gear with military style weapons. No exaggeration here. This is what they're doing in 2022. And it reminds me a lot of the tactics that were used by segregationists at the end of Reconstruction. And as more African Americans got the ability to vote, those type of intimidation tactics amped up. And so I am just wondering, and I wonder if you are wondering the same thing with me, what century are we in? Are we in the 20th century or the 21st century? Are we in the 19th century? Or are we in the 21st century? That's a very real question. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And that is why we must continue to stay vigilant, to fight for these rights, to watch out for them and to continue to fight for them, because things can be taken away. So here we are. Why does it matter? So we have groups such as the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers are looking to sway the upcoming midterms in favor of their preferred candidate by signing up as poll workers and drop box watchers. At the Conference of Mayors, there was an expert there by the name of Mary McCord, and she is the executive director of the Institute for Constitutional Advocacy, and she shared this with the mayors. We've seen them dismantle some of their nationwide organizations. So the Proud Boys dismantle nationally in favor of state chapters. The 3 percenters did the same. We're seeing similar types of threats today as in the 2020 elections, but now the attacks are coming from a very ground up, localized effort. And again, that is coming from Executive Director Mary McCord. And law enforcement agencies as well as elections officials are very much aware of this. They are trying to do everything that they can to protect the ballot box. This is troubling, Ray, what they are doing. You know, the GOP they talk a lot about voter fraud, which they have is minuscule, and we have laws in place to prevent voter fraud. If somebody is caught, they will suffer the consequences legally. But what we do not hear the GOP talk about a lot is voter intimidation, which is also against the law. Ray, what's your take on this story?
Yeah, you made the comparison to like segregationists trying to prevent Black people from voting, and like, let's be honest about it. How are these Proud Boys? How are these white supremacists, these extremist groups deciding which people they're trying to intimidate at the polls? It's the people who they think are going to vote Democrat. It's primarily the people who they see are people of color, sometimes women generally, but they are making these decisions based on the same racist, premise that the people were doing it back then. So it's, history is just a big circle.
Yeah, history is sadly repeating itself. Arizona Secretary of State sent a letter to the US Department of Justice. A complaint was filed by a voter who encountered the monitors when he and his wife delivered their ballots to a drop box in Mesa. The voter said people photographed them and their license plates and accused them of being quote unquote mules, which is racist as hell, and followed them while filming as they drove out of the parking lot. It's important to know that this area has a large Latina population, and they knew exactly. They used the word mule very deliberately. So yes, Ray, their racism is showing it. They ain't got wear the white sheets no more. They wearing military gear over the white sheet, suits over the white sheets today.
And during the daytime, they're wearing their police uniforms.
Sometimes. I gotta say, not all of them, right? But yeah, I hear you on that. And interesting how Fox News, our dearly beloved Fox News, can't figure out who's making these threats. Take a look at this headline. Fox News reports on threats against election workers, but it's somehow unclear who is making those threats. Take a look and a listen at this.
Are now facing more death threats as we get closer to the midterm elections. Senior correspondent Eric Shawn is on that for us. So Eric, security is also ramping up then.
It really is, and it has to be, Sandra, because there's active shooter training now for poll workers, bulletproof glass for offices. You know, the democratic process of voting in our country, they say, is really under siege. Election officials reporting across the country that there has been an increase in violent threats against them. In Mesa, Arizona, police were called when voters saw so-called voter integrity activists in masks and touting guns, monitoring the voting at a drop box. Authorities have launched voter intimidation investigations in that state. Election officials largely blame the threats on the spread of false election claims and lies about voting.
Right, look at these fools. I mean, and you know, this type of behavior has certainly amped up since January 6th, since the siege on the Capitol. These groups are more emboldened, and they are definitely playing chess to move it from a national frame to a local frame. They are not playing around in terms of the mission that they think they have to disrupt and corrupt the election process. So you want to talk about fraud? These people are a fraud.
People at Fox News are frauds too. That was shameless, that segment. They're talking about amping up false information about the election. You're looking in a mirror. You're the network that was doing that. Where do you think they were getting these ideas? They were getting it, on the white power hour with Tucker Carlson. They were getting it in the morning on Fox and Friends. All the lies that you were spreading to your audience, and now they're acting on it. And it's really concerning. Everyone should be able to vote. No one should feel insecure with voting. No one should feel unsafe when they're casting a ballot. But this is part of the right-wing connection to fascism. They're trying to intimidate people out of voting to undo democracy.
That's exactly right. And neo-fascism is unfortunately on the rise in this country, and we must fight it with all of our might. And that means each and every one of us is not just up to elected officials. It is incumbent upon all of us to be aware and to do our part to protect and renew this representative democracy known as the United States of America.